Right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of Gravesham Borough Council's Performance and Administration Cabinet Committee meeting on 30th of September 2025. I intend to go through some housekeeping matters. This meeting is being live streamed via YouTube and recorded. The recording will be uploaded to the YouTube within 2 working days, where it can be accessed by everyone. Members, please use the microphone in front of you. When talking, ensure you turn your microphone off. Once you have finished speaking, another member or officer will not be able to speak if your microphone is still on. Please note that a council is visual occupant may, on some other occasion, focus on near the public gallery area. Therefore, those who intend to at this meeting may be filmed and recorded. Attendance at this meeting signify your agreement to this. If as a member of the public you don't want to wish to film or record it, please inform the council staff and attendance, and we will try to assist you where reasonably possible. On hearing the fire alarm, we will ask all the attendees to immediately evacuate the building. Please evacuate via the nearest exit and make your way to community square outside the main section doors. That's that done. Let's start the meeting. Apologies.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillors Rolls, Hills and Sizer, with Councillor King, Wardle and Metcalfe as substitute.
Thank you. Right, sign the minutes of the previous meeting. Are we all agree? Yep. Okay. Next one, to declare any interest members may have in the items contained on this agenda. When declared an interest, members should state what their interest is. Everybody? Okay. To consider whether any items in Part A of the agenda should be considered in private or those, if any, Part B in public are not known of. And so agenda item 6, corporate performance report. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is to present members of the committee with an update of the performance against the corporate performance management framework, which was introduced with the council's corporate plan. So this is for Q1, so the period from April to June, and it is for information purposes only. If you look at page 12 in your pack, you'll see performance indicator 60, which is the average time for processing new housing benefit claims. Q1, the average time was 21.5 days, so slightly above the target of 20 days. However, what I want to reassure members is that doesn't mean to say every claim is taking 21.5 days. It is an average, so there will be some claims that will be going through quickly, some taking slightly longer. Also, we are going through a changing caseload as we move cases to universal credit. So that used to be you'd get very simple claims that could be done within a day, which would bring the average down, whereas now we are dealing with the more complicated claims which have remained with us, such as supported and temporary accommodation. And actually, when we're writing out for evidence, claimants, have a calendar month to get us that information back. The government have published performance for last year, and actually the national trend over the last 12 months is a worsening one, so it is taking longer to assess new claims. The average across the country last year was 21 days. For Kent, it was averaging 20 days, and for Gravesham, we did 17 days. So, we outperformed the national average last year, and it's one of those which Q1 is always busy because you're dealing with the new year, so everybody's getting rent increases, pension increases, so we do have a high influx of work. So this performance over Q2, 3 and 4 should improve. The next PI 61 is for processing changes in circumstances. And as you see, very strong performance of 3.7 days against the target of 6 days. Again, last year, nationally, the average was 6 days. For Kent, the average was 6 days, whereas Gravesham, our average last year was 3 days. So again, we were outperforming sort of the national picture. So we were doing well there. On page 13, so this is in respect of council tax reductions. As you can see, for new cases, Q1 is 26.5 days. So again, above our target of 20 days. Similar reasons in terms of beginning of the year, there's always an influx of cases. That picture should improve. And then for PI 63, which are changes, again, 1.2 days against the target of 5. What I would say, over the first period, Q1 compared to last year, we actually received and processed more work in Q1 this year than we did last year. So although when you look, you think your days of process are worse, actually we processed more work. It's just because it's the more complicated cases, it is taking longer to gather all that evidence, which is impacting on those days to process. At this point, I'll hand over to James to cover the fraud aspect.
Thank you. Yes, so PI 68, this indicator relates to the number of agreed internal audit actions implemented and obviously fluctuates depending on the number that become due at each end of each month. The total number of recommendations due for implementation by the end of June 25 was 6, 4 of which had been implemented, giving an outturn of 66.7%. Now, as of today, that is now 100% implemented for those due by 30th of June. We have also included a brief update on the activity of internal audit and counter fraud as of 30th of June, but to give you an update on the current position, internal audit plan delivery now stands at 16% with a further 26% underway, and that's based on the number of reviews we expect to undertake across the whole year. We don't have exactly 50% of the plan in the first half of the year because obviously we have to take account of anything overrunning from the previous year. What I can say is this is possibly the best position we've been in for a few years given the resourcing issues that we've had over the past couple of years. In terms of counter fraud activity, as reported to the Finance and Audit Committee a couple of weeks ago, 165 investigations had been concluded as of the 31st of July, with cashable savings of 197,867 identified. Now that's made up of additional council tax and a council property recovery as well. We also have several cases in the courts seeking possession of council properties as a result of investigations. Thank you.
If I cover the last PI before opening up for any questions regarding this report. So the last one is PI 69, which is information requests completed within statutory deadline. Q1, slightly disappointing, only 82.6%. Now, this has been down to some staff changes, so we're quite optimistic over Q2 and 3 that performance will improve. And at that point, Chair, I'll open up for any questions regarding this particular report.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, James. I got a question actually for Andrew and James as well. First one is for Andrew. Q1, 21 days, 0.5 is quite higher compared to last 2 years, if you look all the quarters. And on actually PI 63, we're doing really well actually, 1.2 days there. So what's the reason for P60 is so high this time?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it is down to changes in the caseload as the working age are moving across to universal credit. Fundamentally for housing benefit, we're left with the more complicated cases, the supported housing, temporary accommodation. So naturally it takes longer to obtain all the evidence to support those cases. As I said, claimants can have, if they've submitted a claim and it doesn't have all the evidence we need, we have to contact the claimant. They then get a calendar month to provide us that information. clearly, until we've got that information, we can't assess the claim. I think also need to recognise with universal credit, people's circumstances are reviewed sort of every 4 to 6 weeks, so we get notified of those changes. We are receiving more work. If I look for the period from April to the end of August, so last year we'd received 24,500 notifications, pieces of work. This year, for the same period, we're at 27,500. Last year we processed less than 20,000. This year we processed just less than 21,000. So we are receiving more work, we're processing more work. Unfortunately, the complications with that work means sometimes it does take longer. What we should see over the next 2 quarters is that performance improve, because we've got over the hump of the beginning of the financial year. Yeah, so hopefully I'll be sitting here at the next meeting presenting a better performance for that PI.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Councillor Tandy.
Thank you, Chair. Every year, Q1 is normally more. Is there any chance we can have more staff in Q1 so that it won't? Because if you can see from last 2 years, it's Q1 is taking more time. So in the future, can we do something so that it will be less time? Thank you.
It's probably fair to say in the current climate, I'm never going to get more staff. What we need to look at is our processes. Can we make them more efficient? Can we automate more of the work? Q1, as I said, we'll get all the rent increases. So all the housing associations, all those rents come through. Can we automate them rather than have to manually update them? People's pensions tend to go up at the beginning of the financial year. So it's looking at what can we do smarter to then free up staff to do the stuff that we can't automate. And, we have a plan where we are looking at all our processes to try and identify how we can just become more efficient, do it quicker and cheaper, in all honesty.
Councillor Harney, please.
Thank you, Chair. Quite a lot of complementary figures that you come up with. But what I want some clarification, basically, is that when you compare us with the national average, I tend to think, is that because the caseload here it is wonderfully lighter than the national average, or is it that we find ourselves much more efficient in being able to process them better than the national average? Thank you.
I think it's probably fair to say each month we provide our data to the Department of Work and Pensions. They produce the statistics. Obviously, what I don't know for other authorities is what their caseload is like, or how much they invest in the service, how many people they have working in the service. I can only sort of really comment on our caseload, and it is varied. But, it's its priority, so we do prioritise trying to get that work processed. But unfortunately, I can't comment on comparison to other authorities. So.
Okay. Right, Councillor King.
Yes, just following on from what Gary said and what you said about working smarter to bring down the figure for the first quarter. What you said so far seems like idea or suggestions. I just want to ask, have you been implementing that? Because what you said, working smarter, how you can automate them, it sounds like someone giving idea to another person or giving suggestion to another person. Are you telling us that is what you are working on?
Yes, we have a service development plan, and we are looking at, we have I guess, is it functionality or a product called Atlas, where we get weekly files from the Department of Work and Pensions. So we're forever reviewing those parameters to in effect, try and push more for automated, and then the officer is just doing that quality assurance, along with trying to encourage more claimants to complete their form online. And I know people say, well, some people don't like online, it's paper. I think the difference is, certainly for council tax reduction housing benefit, if I give you a paper form, you are going to get a 24-page form that covers all eventualities. If you fill it in online, it's intuitive, so it will only ask you questions based on what you're putting in. So it's a simpler process. It is uploaded straight away. So you do it today, it's being processed, it'll be sorted tomorrow. A paper form, I will post it to you. Could take 4 days, could take a week. You'll then post it back or drop it in. You know, we're trying to, as well as the development, it's that cultural change of trying to encourage people to use some of the online services, because actually it's better for them, because they will, as I said, only be asked the questions. If you've got accessibility issues, you know, you can change the screen, and then from our perspective, it updates the system. So again, we can do things smarter. So yeah, we do have a service development plan, and these ideas are on there. We talk to our software company of how they can help us, you know, get over some of our hurdles. So it's a continuing process of evolution, really.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's fair to say that Andrew has come in January this year, and he's brought a lot of fresh ideas, which has greatly helped. There have been resourcing issues, so that's been one or two problems. If only we could get extra trained staff. It takes a good 6 to 12 months to train a person to assess a claim. But what Andrew's been doing is, as he's been saying, is looking at smarter processes, and I think that will start coming out. I think the other thing as well I'd just like to put across is, when you see it in stark figures, 21, 22 days to assess a claim, that sounds an awful long time. However, that is the amount of time from when we've received the form. We also need all the evidence to support it, to be able to assess it. And so we do need to work smarter on obtaining all of that information. It is unfortunately complicated. It's also, unfortunately, we have been left with the more complex cases, as Andrew has said. So I think that all that being said, the performance remains strong. We haven't got the latest figures from nationally for this year. However, it's fair to say that what we're hearing is that authorities across the country, the average is increasing because, again, they're left with more and more complex cases. So you've got no simpler cases to bring down that particular average. I think when you compare it to the changes in circumstances, and you see that, you know, we're turning these change of circumstances round in an average of 1 or 2 days, you probably think, how on earth can you manage that? Well, the way that we do that is that they are simpler changes. It could be a change in income, which is simply a specific field in the system that needs to be changed, and we can automate that. When you get a new claim, it's far more complex, and that needs it still needs a lot of human intervention and check-in. It's very difficult to automate that particular area, particularly in these complex cases. Hope that clarifies a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Yeah, Councillor King.
Yeah, just going on from that, is the government doing anything about educating people? I mean, you know, in order to simplify your work and increase the performance, like, you know, we talk of online filling the form and the paper one. Is there any form of educating the public on how to go about these things that makes their claim, for instance, to be processed faster than the other side, filling the form, getting the 24 pages or 30 pages, explaining rather than the intuitive one on the internet? Is there anything that the government is doing to aid this so that it doesn't just fall on you to see as if you are not working, you know, you understand what I mean?
What I would say, I guess, if you were claiming universal credit, you have to do it online. So I guess part of their education is they've taken away the other mechanisms, whereas we still offer paper forms. So certainly, the state benefit system is moving to an online only process, and I guess paper is by exception. I don't know whether you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I think I was going to say the problem that we've got is that local authorities, particularly in respect of the council tax reduction scheme, there are variable schemes. Every authority scheme tends to be different to another, whereas universal credit, universal, everybody, it's the same form. Housing benefits, there's no standard form in the country. That being said, it should be requesting for the same information. And over time, we've tried to make them simpler. And so with online, you can make it more intuitive. So there's a lot there that we could still try and do. And that's where Andrew's brought in vast experience in those particular areas. So hopefully that will start improving. Also, I know that with the resourcing issues, we've now got people in post and they're learning fast as well to start moving various things forward. So watch this space in Q3.
Councillor Harding.
Thank you, Chair. I want to expand a bit on what Daniel was saying about people being able to interact, and in particular, where you have situations with people with disabilities or visual impairment. I mean, we are very excited about AI, but it's all about, not just about AI, but it's about being able to interact with the people in all the different circumstances that they find themselves in. So obviously, I hope you got a database of people with visual impairment that you find ways of ensuring that they are included into the process. And I mean, I never forgot the bad old days where I would inquire about a hearing aid centre for new hearing aids, and they sent me email and said, yes, thank you for your inquiries. If you want to learn more, phone up this number. So a lot of people forget all these little things like that. So I think it's very important because we are getting older and people having all sorts of issues with visual, hearing and so on. So it's important that these people do not find themselves excluded from all this new technology that we've got going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Beattie.
My question's different to the rest of this evening. On the freedom of information requests, what happens as a consequence for the ones that don't meet the statutory deadline? I've tried to see it, so if I missed it, apologies. But is there a consequence of any sort to missing that? Thanks.
The target is, I think it's 20 days, isn't it? 20 working days that we have to respond. And obviously, if we don't, then they could take it further. They could raise an issue. However, it's reviewed by the Information Commissioner's Office. So they look to see how authorities are performing. Now, 82% isn't the 90% that we're aiming for, but 82% is still a high figure, may I suggest. Very basically, freedom of information requests can be very complex. They could, and we would have to respond if we held the data, even where the data would take us 18 hours to calculate and to respond by looking at obtaining the information if we hold it. And it might not be quite in the format that we need. So that is a long time. That can take a long time. We do not have staff who all they do is freedom of information requests. That's on top of everything else that we are doing. And there are complex requests that we receive. There are various exemptions. You'll notice if you were to look on our website, there are certain things that we publish monthly on there, which speeds up those particular cases. We get lots of requests in the revenues and benefits world from agents to do with business rates. So why do they need to look up various things when the council can calculate this for them? And we get lots of requests for that, so we publish it online. So now all we need to do to the agent, say it's in the public domain, here it is, go and do the work, you find it yourself. So, you know, the thing that they can do is the Information Commissioner officer could come back to us to, find out why we've not responded promptly enough. But I say, it's moving there. So, thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I've got a question for James, actually. P68, P69 is, you know, those both performances a bit disappointing. I know there were some staffing issues around audit, where we are at the moment. So hopefully, you know, these figures may get better next time. Thank you.
Yes, we had a number of periods of vacancy in years. So around August time last year, one of our auditors left to join another local authority. We plugged that gap with a secondment from counter fraud, but at the same time, I also had someone who unfortunately had a very bad back injury and was off sick. Then we knew retirements were approaching. We had an officer retire in February, and then the officer that had been off with a back injury also retired. So for a while, we were down by a number of people. We have now recruited to all posts. Obviously, the secondment meant I had a gap in the counter fraud resource. I also lost one of my investigators to the same authority in January of this year. So we've had gaps on both sides at various points in the year. I'm pleased to say that as of, I want to say May, June time, we are fully staffed now in both teams. We have lost a lot of experience with the retirements, and the way the job market is at the moment, it is very difficult. There's a shortage of qualified auditors, so we did take on the two new officers are trainees. However, in some ways, that's actually working to our advantage. They're very keen to learn, very hungry for the job. So it's quite positive, really. They've both started their apprenticeship training this month. So I think they'll be well up to speed over time. Obviously, they've got on-the-job training as well alongside the apprenticeship. So I think it's all looking very positive at the moment. He says, touch every piece of wood I can find.
Thank you, James. Right, next one is agenda item 7, annual review of audit and counter fraud shared services.
Thank you, Chair. The annual review for the internal audit and counter fraud shared service has been completed and was considered by Sarah Parfitt as Director of Corporate Services, and also Phil Watts, who's Chief Operations Officer at Medway Council. Appendix 2 is on page 23 of the report, detailed the outcome of the recent review, and I wish to draw members' attention to the overview section of the report, which gave information on the structure of the service, the outcomes of the balance in the budget activity, and decisions by a management team to redirect some staff and resources to internal investigations. This redirection did not mean a reduction in level of resource, but a refocus on some of its activity. The report also sets out a summary of performance against the 2 key objectives, along with outturns against the 3 key performance measures. Recommendations for the coming year relate to preparing the councils for the failure to prevent fraud offence that came into effect on the 1st of September, and to continue the development of new trainees to rebuild our service resilience. Both councils are happy with the shared working arrangements. It provides value for money, And as this committee and particularly Finance and Audit Committee have heard, there have been some very strong performances in relation to fraud. And happy to take any questions. And we have James here as well to answer the more complex questions on his particular service.
Oh, actually, I've got one question. Page 25 is number 2. It said deliver an effective counter fraud and investigation services. It's right on the bottom there. The team identified fraud savings excess of like 688k across the partnership during 24-25, which is excess of the team cost over 300,000. Could you just elaborate what it is?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes, so those figures are actually slightly below what they were. I discovered when preparing for this meeting that there was an error in one of the spreadsheets that has all the figures. There was an error in a formula. The savings for Gravesham during 24-25 are actually 314,000. So the total across the partnership is just over 746,000 in terms of the savings. So the savings for Gravesham, the breakdown of that is around 112,000 relates to council tax. The Cabinet Office apply a notional saving of 93,000 for every council property that's recovered through abandonment or subletting. So we recovered 2 properties for Gravesham, so that's 186,000 notional saving. We apply a notional saving of 4,000 to any removals from our housing waiting list. We only apply that saving if the person is trying to bid on properties and therefore benefit either from false statement or failure to report changes in their circumstances. And we also, a temporary accommodation placement was ended for non-residents as a result of our work. We had that's got a notional saving of a little over 12,000 applied to it. What this does is to try and calculate how the impact, the financial impact of the work we've been doing in relation to temporary accommodation. We look, the housing service have calculated the average period of time a family is in temporary accommodation, so X amount of weeks. We take the weekly charge for the placement we've cancelled, apply the average amount of time that a family would be in there. That figure then becomes the notional saving, the impact of the work we've carried out. So that's how the figures for Gravesham are made up. Obviously, we've got stuff for Medway. Again, it's council, the bulk of it's council tax. They did have a property recovery. We also blocked a fraudulent right to buy, so we prevented the loss of the discount there, and we also stopped a temporary accommodation placement of Medway as well. So that's how those figures are made up. Obviously, when we refer to the team costs, that's the resourcing costs for the counter fraud team, which also picks up part of the resource that's dedicated to internal investigations, and that's across both councils.
Thank you, James. Okay, next one, agenda item 8, Corporate Register of Partnership, July 2025.
Thank you, Chair. The Corporate Register of Partnerships and Shared Working Arrangements is actually available on the Council's website, and it's reviewed on an annual basis. The register can be found on page 33 to 41 of the agenda report pack. There are 2 current partnerships that relate to the work of the Performance and Administration Committee, and these are the Internal Audit and Counter Fraud Shared Service, plus the Legal and Information Governance Shared Service. But it should be noted that only the information governance elements falls under the responsibility of the Performance and Administration Committee. Both shared services have been reviewed, and again, Sarah Parfitt, as Section 151 officer, has concluded that both services continue to offer a high quality value for money service. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Right. No questions. Okay, we can move on. Agenda item 9, consultation response, modernising and improving the administration of council tax. Okay, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper I'm sharing with you is the council's formal response to the government's consultation on modernising and improving the administration of council tax. The consultation actually closed on the 12th of September, so what you have before you is the response we submitted. The government's consultation proposed a range of reforms, which included moving the default payment scheme from 10 monthly instalments to 12 instalments, updating the terminology and eligibility criteria for some of the sort of the mental health related discounts, increasing the use of digital communication and data sharing between the councils and central government, and introducing a standardised approach to enforcement costs and liability orders. I think it's probably fair to say we welcome sort of the spirit of the reform, and although support the majority, we did raise some concerns in some areas. While the 12 monthly billing may help some residents, we have cautioned about making it the default scheme, because at the moment the default scheme is 10 monthly instalments. People can apply to pay over 12 monthly, and we've probably got around about 7,500 households that do that. But we also appreciate that some households look on the 10 monthly instalment that they have their 2 free months and perhaps use the money they haven't paid out in those 2 months for other seasonal costs. In terms of the impact on the council, moving to 12 monthly instalments probably reduces our monthly income by about £1 million a month, which then impacts on the interest we may make through savings, which is round about, it's been sort of calculated around about £170,000 impact annually, which obviously impacts on our ability to deliver services. The mental health disregards, again, we welcome the modernisation of outdated language, but again, flags perhaps some of the barriers that people face applying, whether there's more we can do around data sharing between the councils, the NHS, Department of Work and Pensions, to try and simplify and reduce the stigma of applying. Actually, if we can share the data and perhaps be more proactive in awarding it, we may get a higher uptake. What they've proposed around sort of support for carers and apprentices, again, totally support that, but again, sort of flag the need to look at some of the criteria and upgrade, particularly around apprentices, how much they can earn to qualify for the disregard, because they've not been changed for some time. Again, support the enforcement around early engagement. One of the proposals is standardising the value of cost that can be charged for sort of summons and liability order. We don't actually support that principle because, again, the cost will be different for councils across the country because they've all got different costs. But what we've sort of proposed is perhaps having a standard formula that councils follow how they calculate the cost. And then we've sort of added in some, how about thinking about a revaluation, looking at more data sharing, particularly around local authorities and HMRC. Again, looking at those people that can pay, but perhaps choose not to pay. Actually, if the HMRC know they're working and share that data with us, we can apply for attachment of earnings, whereas at the moment, we don't have that link. There's been a couple of pilots, but it's still not been rolled out. And we've also called for the council tax reduction scheme to be a national 100% scheme. So again, standardising the scheme across the country to support low income households, whereas at the moment, because it's local authority, it's different across Kent, let alone the rest of the country. But yeah, you've got the full response there. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Obviously, it's going to make effect on the cash flow. What's the reason the government want this consultation? Do we know why they're trying to do this?
I think it's probably fair to say there's been an element of lobbying. The council that, perhaps council tax has been around since 1993. It needs a review, and certainly we would support that review. I think the thoughts around offering the default of 12 monthly instalments is to help households in the current climate. So it's a lesser amount over 12 months rather than 10 months. But as I said, they can ask for that now, and 7,000 of our households already have. But we know we have other customers or council taxpayers that prefer 10 monthly instalments, weekly instalments, half yearly, or one lump sum. So we're trying to accommodate everybody. And if we work with customers over payment profiles, so if people are having difficulties, as I said, it isn't just about 10 or 12. It could be weekly, fortnightly, half yearly.
Thank you, Andrew. Any question? Yeah, Wardle.
Can you excuse my ignorance? It's not normally one of my committees, but earlier you said that because people are paying over 12 months with the council tax, you're losing £1 million a month. But surely that is made up at the end of the year where they're doing the extra 2 months.
Yes, certainly. If we collect all the money all year, we get the totality. But actually, the monthly income that we receive, the council invests and earns interest, and which generates additional income. So that additional income would be lost because of the cash flow is over a longer period.
All right. Thank you. Agenda item 10 is survey response crisis and reliance fund survey. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So again, this is another survey that we've responded to, and I'm sharing the response. So the government have announced they want to introduce a new crisis and resilience fund from the 1st of April next year, which will replace the household support fund and discretionary housing payments. So it will be into a single fund. Now, the government's vision is focused on crisis support and prevention. The fund will focus on 3 main areas. So provision and access to effective crisis support, improving individuals and local communities' financial resilience, and bolstering community level support. I think the challenge, particularly in a 2-tier area at the moment, household support fund goes to the county council, discretionary housing benefits come to the district or borough. The government are proposing to have a new fund. At the moment, they're still in the co-design stage, so we don't actually know the detail. And I think what the Local Government Association was trying to draw out from local authorities is their views, their concerns. It suggested the fund is £1 billion per year, but that isn't new money. If you add up across the country, the household support fund and the discretionary housing payment, it's about £1 billion. So this isn't new money, it's a new fund. And I think at the moment, there's not a lot to add because we don't know the detail, even who is going to administer it from April. Hopefully, in the coming months, we will find that detail. And if it is still for the 1st of April, then there's potentially a lot to do in a short period of time. But I just wanted to put it on, make you aware. And at next committee, hopefully we know a bit more detail and I can share a bit more information with you. Happy to answer any questions.
Oh, well, thank you, Andrew. We've got a lot of questions, but as you said, it's not much information there. Till we get more information, I'm sure you can share with the committee. Any questions? Yeah, Councillor Harding.
Yeah, I think of the big. So you were saying it's not new money, so it's not extra taxes from somewhere else. It's, I assume, a rearranging of the finance of certain elements that will be redirected somewhere else. And at this moment, we don't know which percentages from the arrangement it will be until we get the outcome eventually. I hope that makes sense.
Perfect sense, yes. At the moment, we have Household Support Fund, which is administered by Kent County Council. We have discretionary housing payments that Gravesham Council administer. They're going to be abolished, and a new fund called Crisis and Resilience Fund is going to replace them both. And at the moment, we don't know how whether it's going to be a county council function, a Gravesham function. You know, we're waiting for the details. I think you perfectly summed that up.
There's a lot of don't knows at the moment. Yeah, Councillor King.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, like you said, this is kind of rebranded. So what you are saying in essence is there's nothing you can do at the moment until the information is out to you. So there's no preparatory stages to say, okay, we have to get this one sorted, get that one sorted, and get ready for it. So my question would then be, has this got anything to do with the devolution that is coming on?
No, it's not related to the devolution. And yes, we are sitting tight. Now, in the summer, the Department of Work and Pensions had an online Teams call. I think there was over 600 representatives from local authorities. They were very clear to state this is co-design with government and local government, and they were going to have these work groups, and authorities could put themselves forward to be on these working groups to help shape what it's going to look like. I don't know who got selected, but certainly there was no authorities in Kent that put themselves forward, got selected to be on a working group. So, you know, we're in communication with County Council and our other colleagues across Kent to see whether there are any snippets of information coming out. But at the moment, it is a waiting game. I think they suggested come October, there'll be more information to share. So hopefully in the coming weeks, something come around. As I said, I can provide an update at the next P&A committee. So.
Thank you, Andrew. Right. Next item, revenues and benefits update. There's a verbal update.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to give you the position as at the end of August. So council tax collection, we'd collected £39 million, which is about around 46.12% of what we've got to collect. That's around 0.5% down on where we were last year. However, the reminders for August payments for those that hadn't made a payment didn't go to the beginning of September. So I'm hoping when I look at the end of September tomorrow, we've recovered that position. Business rates collection was 52.02%. So that was up 2.35% or £715,000 on the same period last year. So actually, we're doing really well collecting business rates this year. We continue to collect previous year's arrears, and since April, we've reduced the outstanding council tax arrears by 1.6 million. So we're doing really well on that previous year collection. Business rates, we've reduced it by about £802,000. So I just wanted to reassure committee, as well as focus on current year, we do still chase previous year's arrears. On business rates, benefits, obviously we touched on where we were at the end of quarter one. At the end of August, new claims was 21.2 days for housing benefit, 28.9 days for CTR. Changes were 3.8 days and 1.4 days. So again, we're still working towards that. And as Pat said, we've got some new staff that start in the next couple of weeks. So over the following quarter, we'll recover that. Household support fund. So although all the household support fund goes to county council, they do pass an element down to districts and boroughs. So this year we received 324,000. Proviso was 40% needed to be spent by the end of September. I can confirm we have succeeded in spending that 40% through providing support for low-income families with children to support buying new school uniforms, funding towards Eleanor, to food banks, and sort of security tenure. So we are able to draw on the following 60% because we've met the government's target of sort of spending 40% by the end of September. So again, doing really well on allocating that funding. So.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. And Andrew, thank you for all the everything that you are doing. You are doing really well. My question is just, apart from the fact that you said sending out the reminder for August was stopped until September, and you have done well on council tax and every other area. The question would be, what are the bottlenecks that you have realized or that you have discovered that makes these arrears to pile up before collecting them? One, and then regarding the 40% that you have been able to manage to spend, what will be the consequence? Say, for instance, you are unable to reach that 40% in order to draw on the 60% remaining. What will be the consequence? Does it mean that if you don't spend the 40%, you won't get the remaining 60% if you don't meet the government target? Thank you.
Yeah, if I answer the last question, precisely correct. If we hadn't spent the 40%, we couldn't draw down on the 60%, and that's a government requirement, not a Kent County Council requirement. So obviously we endeavoured to ensure we met that so we can draw the rest of the money to support the local community. In terms of the arrears, it's probably a mixed bag between those people that affordability is an issue. You know, current sort of cost of living crisis impacts on many low income households. So again, some people struggle to pay in year, may still be paying previous years. If we can do deductions from people's earnings, if we know where they work, we can do deductions from their benefit. But to do that, you have to take them through the courts. Again, that takes time. You can't necessarily collect it in year. And then the people that perhaps can afford to pay but choose not to pay, again, you have to go through the courts to sort of instigate enforcement action. And, that takes time. Courts are very busy. We only get so many court dates a year. What we are looking at doing is trying to, again, on that whole efficiency agenda, we're imminently going to pilot, rather than send a paper reminder, where we've got mobile phone numbers and email addresses, we're going to use a digital reminder. So where people perhaps haven't paid their monthly instalment, they will get an automated voice, they will get an email, they will get a text message. And I think what you find, I think industry standard is text messages are probably opened within 90 seconds of being received. Emails 2 or 3 days, mail can take up to 30 days. So what we're trying to do is prompt people quicker. If they pay, it stops them going down the formal recovery route. What we intend to do is build in links so it can, if they need debt advice, they can click on a link. We will get them reporting, so we'll know where people are clicked. So certainly if somebody's clicking for debt advice, actually we could do that outreach. Clearly it's cost less money, it's more efficient, and with the post office moving to potentially sort of every other day delivery, reminders in the post are going to take longer to get there. So we do need to look at smarter ways, and we're looking to pilot that. So again, future meetings, I can come back and share with you how that sort of is working out. So yeah, we're trying to find different ways just to remind people to either pay, or at least if they are struggling, engage with us, because then we can help them. If we don't know there are problems, it's difficult to help people.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, next item. Agenda item 12, any other business? I have not been informed, so that's that. Part B, I've got nothing. So I'll close the meeting. Good night, everybody. Thank you.